Urgent, Steelers fan! Look at what just happened. Nobody saw this coming, huh? But first, make sure to subscribe to the channel because we bring you daily videos with the latest your team news. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. Grading DK Metcalf's $150 million contract extension with Steelers grading DK Metcalf's trade and extension with the Steelers in the 2025 offseason. The Pittsburgh Steelers made the splash that fans expected in 2025 NFL free agency, but it didn't come at the position of the biggest need. On March 9th, right after the Los Angeles Rams essentially put the kibosh on a Cooper Cup future in the Sunshine State, picking up Davante Adams on a 2-year commitment, the news would only get crazier. As the Sunday evening went on, the Steelers continued the marathon by sending a 2025 second-round pick to the Seattle Seahawks for DK Metcalf, followed by a 5-year, $150 million extension that keeps the 2-time Pro Bowl wideout in the Steel City for the long haul. Now begs the question, what are the Steelers going to do for a quarterback? The team called in 2018 third-round pick Mason Rudolph on March 13th, providing a backup plan and familiarity to the franchise. While that move put the QB hunt on a temporary hold, this is still an unresolved dilemma. With time winding down before April's NFL draft, the Steelers are down to a select group of options after a turbulent free agency. Aaron Rodgers has been atop the list despite the everlasting delay of him narrowing down his preferred landing spot in the Steelers, New York Giants, or potentially the Minnesota Vikings, like he's the customer with 100 questions for the cashier in line at Walmart. The 41-year-old veteran, following an utterly disastrous 2-year stint in the Big Apple, is looking more of a risk than reward. Pittsburgh would be better off not getting further tangled up in the mess, becoming the proverbial doormat this offseason. Russell Wilson offers continuity, and he wound up being a solid fit in Arthur Smith's scheme last year, but that was a different time with a different paycheck. So while a Wilson-Metcalf connection could potentially be something, what this team needs is a fresh start. The 2025 NFL draft class doesn't possess the most alluring prospects. However, with the likes of Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, and Will Howard, all of whom have done their fair share of winning in college football, the Steelers could afford to give a young gunslinger an opportunity. Regardless of how things shake out, over the next month, the addition of a proven playmaker in Metcalf was a must. The Steelers abandoned their second-round draft pick as part of the deal with the Seahawks, but to secure an offensive weapon like Metcalf in his prime, that number 50 selection will soon vanish from memory. Another positive for the Steelers is Metcalf's renewed fervor. He's not hitting the panic button on what the team does or doesn't have now. Instead, he believes in where the franchise is going. Based on its history, he's comfortable with the current situation, per ESPN's Brooke Pryor. Coach Mike Tomlin, Mr. Omar Khan, and Mr. Art Rooney all hopped on the phone with me Sunday, and it just felt homey, felt welcoming that they wanted to bring me to this historic organization, Metcalf said at his introductory news conference. Everything just snowballed from there and brought me here in front of you today. Metcalf gives the Steelers another primary pass catcher alongside George Pickens, so the talented combo that now exists at Acrisure Stadium should be easier to build around. They made me feel like they had the right decision with who was going to be throwing me the football, Metcalf said of his conversation with Tomlin, Khan, and Rooney. I'm not making the decision in the quarterback room, so I'm just going to try to do the best of my abilities to help whoever they have out there throwing the football. They make the correct decisions to bring the quarterback in here. So I'm just going to roll with that, once the QB concern is presumably put in the rear view. At the start of the 2025-26 season, the Steelers are going to be reflecting on the decision to acquire Metcalf as a serious organizational win. Pausing this news, just to say that if you want YouTube to keep recommending the latest The Black and Gold news to you, it's very important that you leave a like on this video. Thanks. Now let's get back to the news. Aaron Rodgers breaks silence. With Pittsburgh Steelers on negotiations, the Pittsburgh Steelers and free agent quarterback Aaron Rodgers are talking once again. According to Noah Strackbine of On SI, Rodgers and the Steelers had communication for the first time in nearly a week yesterday. That does not mean a resolution between Rodgers and the Steelers is imminent, though it could coming sooner than later. Either way, the last time Rodgers was in a similar position, he waited until NFL Draft Week to figure out what he wanted to do, and it could take that long once again. According to a source close to the situation, Rodgers and the Steelers have spoken for the first time in several days. It's unknown what the conversation included or if any progress was made on an answer, but for the first time since what's believed to be last week, there has been contact between Pittsburgh and Rodgers. Strackbine wrote, Rodgers has at least two offers out for him, one from the Steelers and another from the New York Giants. The Giants' offer is said to be more lucrative, but that does not mean he will jump at their offer. Deanna Rossini of The Athletic has reported Rodgers ultimately would like to land with the Minnesota Vikings, but whether the Vikings are actually interested remains to be seen. Either way, the timeline for a decision from Rodgers could come at any time. It could be today or a month from now, and no one truly knows how everything will fall into place. Aaron Rodgers owes nothing to Steelers. Take all the time you want. With each passing day, Pittsburgh Steelers fans are becoming increasingly frustrated with Aaron Rodgers. His desire to wait as he figures out his next destination, compounded by the fact that the Steelers still don't really have a starting caliber QB on their roster, is starting to send some into a panic. Fox Sports' Emmanuel Acho is not one of those people. Instead, he thinks Rodgers has earned the right to take as much time as he wants. The only way I would care is if he was holding his teammates or his own franchise hostage. But he owes nothing to the Vikings. He owes nothing to the Steelers, Acho said on the facility on Tuesday. Still, Rodgers, take all the time you want. That's probably the last thing Steelers fans want to hear. However, there are two sides to every story, and Rodgers is at a major crossroads in his career. He'll turn 42 toward the end of the 2025 season. While the Giants offer the potential for some stability, as he could stay in New York, both the Vikings and Steelers seem like better choices. At this point, many believe Minnesota is Rodgers' preferred destination. All this is to say that Rodgers has the right to take his time. It is free agency after all, and he can do what he pleases. That doesn't mean everybody has to be happy about him waiting this long. Cam Hayward, one of the most important players in the history of the franchise, already seems to be a little annoyed at the amount of time all this is taking. It sure seems that people are starting to grow weary of the conversation. Acho would have a problem if Aaron Rodgers was doing this to a team he was already on. For a comparison, he mentioned former Steelers QB Ben Roethlisberger. I didn't like what Ben Roethlisberger was doing with the Steelers, Acho said. I might retire. I might not retire. 'Cause you owe something, you could suggest, to your teammates. In a variety of ways, the end of Roethlisberger's career could have been handled better. It's part of the reason the Steelers are in QB purgatory today. Fortunately, at least the Steelers seem to feel like they'll receive an answer soon. While Rodgers does reserve the right to take as long as he wants, it is undoubtedly holding up both the Steelers and Giants, as well as the other QB options on the market. Steelers' first-round pick signs with Dolphins in free agency. As the Pittsburgh Steelers continue to meander through free agency, they do so with a new identity. The Steelers are now the team that takes big swings in the offseason, that dares to push themselves forward with the brute force of high-level talents, no matter how expensive, and no matter who will end up playing quarterback. In trading a second-round pick for Seattle Seahawks receiver DK Metcalf, the Steelers proved that things can truly change with time. However, that quarterback vacancy remains a concern, and Pittsburgh's work is not done in free agency. The bottom of the roster must be reinforced to insulate a playoff campaign. With the resources being poured into the next few seasons, the organization can ill afford for a single injury to end their season. Signing quality depth free agents will be necessary in the coming weeks. Another at cornerback just came off the board. Former Steelers first-round pick Artie Burns signed with the Miami Dolphins in free agency on Monday, according to Adam Schefter. Former Seahawks free agent CB Artie Burns reached agreement today on a one-year deal with the Miami Dolphins, he wrote. Burns is a former first-round pick from the University of Miami, where he was born and raised. Now, a homecoming. Burns is set to compete with nickel corner Kader Kohou for snaps as Miami's apex defender. His last impression from 2024 is a good place to start. Burns played sparingly with the Seahawks in 2024, playing just over 50 snaps. In Week 18, however, he was one of Seattle's best players, standing out in a win over the Los Angeles Rams. While generally viewed as an acceptable depth signing, his career was far less favorable in Pittsburgh. A first-round pick in 2016, Burns was a key character in a stretch of Steelers defenses that deviated from the organization's tradition of physical, dominant defensive football. He struggled mightily in 2018 before starting a single game in 2019, foreshadowing the end of his tenure
In Western Pennsylvania.
Despite the setback, Burns will approach a decade in the NFL, weathering an absent 2020 and the tribulations that come with failing as a first-round pick. After his time in Pittsburgh, he played a season with the Chicago Bears before a 3-year stint in Seattle. Hale looked to make good on his 2024 flashes in Miami. The Steelers will host the Dolphins in 2025. And now, Steelers. Fan, I want to hear from you. What's your opinion on this? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I don't know if you know this, but your opinion matters a lot for the black and gold. I'll be back any moment with more Steeler Nation news. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go.